Hey people, this is Matthew Butler, and this is my first tutorial with AETuts Plus, and hopefully you learn a thing or two. It's going to be a lot of expression work, so hopefully it's not too much for you to handle. So this is basically what we're going to be making today. It's a nice bouncing effect, a nice rotation, a lot of expressions used. So I'm going to redo this with the AETuts logo this time instead. So first off, go into Illustrator and get your logo. You want to break down your text into different layers. Obviously right now they're all on this layer 2, so I'm going to need to separate them all. Those are some layers for me, and I just need to ungroup them right here. The A and the E are still connected, so I'll have to ungroup again. Alrighty, now you want to cut these and paste them into the layer. So Command X, Command F to paste in the exact same location. So you just do that for each layer, each of the letters here, and once you're done, you're going to want to rename all these so you know what exactly they're called. This layer 2 only has the background, and I'm going to want to split this part onto layer 10, so everything is on basically their own layer. As you can see, the colors, they're on their own layer. Now renaming these, background 1 would stand for B, B2, and then you just label them correctly. So when you get into After Effects, you can easily find your way around without guessing which one is which. So now basically everything is split up and we can move into After Effects. You want to import that file you just created, and you want to make sure it's on composition, not footage, and it should be on layer size. Those are pretty important. So now that you got that imported, let's open it up, and there you go, same logo you just were looking at. So you want to copy these and you want to put them in a new composition. I'm just gonna select one of these. This looks good to me. 9 seconds is plenty, and let's make the background a little red so you can see everything, and paste those files in. Make sure they're centered, and we are good to go. This little point here is the anchor point, and you want to make sure that it is aligned to where you want the string or rope. If I want it to be hanging off the A right here, I am going to drag it up off of the screen so it's just outside of the area, and do that for all of them. Once you get that taken care of, we can move on to creating the actual rope, which is always fun. Use some Venetian blinds. Alrighty, Venetian blinds, here we go. Let's first off rename this to be animation, and then make a new composition, which is going to be your rope. Drag down the height to 4, which is the minimum height that your project can possibly be, and retitle it Rope. And there you go, you got yourself a rope. You're going to want to make 2 solid layers, one dark and one light. We'll make the dark one first, and the light one, which I'll rename and give you a nice little light color. Then bring up the Venetian blinds. In the effects palette, you want to change the direction just to be at a little angle so it looks a little bit more like a rope. And then for the transition, you want to have it pretty small, probably between 8 and 11 or so. Probably expand this to about 25. And that's your basic rope. You got yourself a rope. Congrats. Now that we have the rope done, let's go in and start adding some expressions. I'm going to start with the T, and you want to pull up the rotation and the anchor point and add expressions to them. So hold down the Alt or Option key and you'll get your expressions. I have written this code with a little help, and basically you can just copy it and follow along while I try to explain it to you. Freq is the frequency, so obviously it's how many times you want this thing to go back and forth per second. And the amplitude is the amount it's going to be going. So if it's a small number, it's going to move a little, and if it's a big number, it's going to be swinging across the screen. Decay is how quickly it comes to a rest. And this bottom part here, this is where the magic happens. So this first one, basically saying that I'm going to have a marker here, which I will add shortly, and that marker is going to be called T. And it will offset this whole expression, so when I add it to the other layers here, they aren't all moving the same time, which will make it look more realistic. Next up, we got the math equation that figures out how quickly things are going on, and this final one puts it all together and adds the decay in, and this is where it all equals out. So the anchor point actual values right here will be incorporated minus whatever we get with this long equation. Alright, now it's going to give me an error because I don't have a key in here yet. So here it is. So I'll just drag this out a few frames in, make a marker, click in, click out, and we are moving. So that's neat, but it's not even close to what we wanted to happen. So we are going to need to increase the frequency just a little. The amplitude needs to be cranked up a ton. Let's try 360, and decay I'll put 1.3. Let's see what happens. That's looking better. Looking like it's fallen from the sky almost now. Now this T is actually on the screen before we should have it on the screen. So for each time we do this, we're going to want to trim that layer to make sure it's right even with this key marker. So now it's just flopping down. The next part, we want to add in the rotation, and I will paste in the expression that I wrote and explain it to you again. So frequency, I already told you, so how often it will occur. The amplitude is the amount it will be rotating. Decay is how quickly it's decaying. I have a control slider in here which I'm going to have to create, which will basically be controlling the rotation of this. So basically this effect right here, I'll just delete this whole line and come in and make that layer that it needs. New solid, and I'm just going to make this into a control slider. Where are you? There we go. So now I have a slider on this layer, and we'll just drag up where we want this to go. And because we're going to have quite a few of these, we need to label things. So this slider instead will be called T1. Alrighty. So what we're going to want to do is add a keyframe to T1. And you want to add it right about where this marker is, where the beginning frame of your animation will be for that letter. And then you want to drag it out. Basically, this is going to be how slow it will be rotating back and forth. So I got it probably right here, and now since it's on the 4-second and the 5th frame, I'm going to label it 4.05. It's going to be rotating somewhat jittery. So it seems to be taking too long to settle, so just bump up the decay just a little bit and it'll just rotate instead now. Alright, so basically we have one letter done. Awesome. Now we just got to do this to every other layer. So basically now we just have to copy and paste this expression to every layer and then just modify it just a little to make sure they look like it's a natural flow of things falling out of the sky. Let's go with the U next. Bring up the anchor and the rotation. Again, add your expressions. Copy the anchor, paste it in. And of course it needs a marker in here. So I'll have this one starting at 7. And remember to crop the layer to right where that frame is. And let's give it a try. Oh, perfect. Except it's the exact same. So let's change the amplitude to 433, the frequency to 1.1, the decay to 2.1, and voila, a little bit different. So to get that one rolling, we need the rotation, and bam, you got a rotation. Except this time we need to have a different effect in here. So we're going to need to go back to our original slide layer that we made. You want to basically just push Command D and you're good to go. So let's label that U, and now we just need to change the values a little. So this one's beginning on the 7th frame, so let's change this over to the 7th, and I want this one to have a nice long rotation to it. So I'm going to bump this up to 5.5. Basically just a guessing game right now. And we'll have to go back into this expression, delete the old value, and then just connect it to the new one. And bam, you are golden. That doesn't rotate quite enough. So let's knock this up a little bit, put it up to 100, decay quite a bit less. Let's go to 0.8. And the frequency should probably be about what your anchor point is. There we go. So that is the U. Continuing on to the next letter. T. Bring anchor point, rotation, add the rotation, and paste the rotation. Now we're going to have to go make another slider. I'm just going to make a duplicate of the T, since this will be our T2, and drag it under. Make sure everything's even. and delete the old one and put in the new one. First thing is first, I'm going to want to change this amplitude to be negative, and I'll just make it 96 just to make it a little bit different, and I like that. Next up, anchor point. List out the anchor point from the previous one, copy it, paste it in, just do a little changing. Frequency, I'm going to drop it down to 1.02. Amplitude, a little bit too much. Let's go 2.213, and decay, let's go 1.7. See how that looks. That's decent. You guys notice the T does not start rotating right away. Comes down and starts rotating. That is not good. To get out of that, we're going to have to go up into your T2, move that just a little, and should be good now. Alright folks, so the one thing that I am having a problem with right now is I don't have enough time in my sliders because they're not landing at the right spot. So I just got to increase it just a little bit. I'm at 9 now. And that's at a resting point. And the U, just a little off. And we look pretty well now. Okay, what I'm going to do with the S is make the frequency, amplitude, and decay exactly the same. So bring up the anchor point and rotation again. And copy the anchor from the previous one, make a marker, paste it in, and just alter these values just a little bit. Let's go to 1.4, let's say. Amplitude, let's go with 340. Decay, let's go 9, 1.9. Now the rotation on this one is going to be a little different. Instead of making this guy the slider, we're not going to use that. We're just going to use the straight code, which means we need to take out this line. And then, instead of the time, it should just be time. So now, make sure they're both the exact same, 340 and 1.9. Make this only visible so I can see what exactly is going on, and it's basically rotating right where it should be. The reason that I'm having a little hiccup here is because I forgot that I don't have a time marker in the rotation. So I need to add that here. Alright, first off, this S is like in the middle of the scene right when it comes down. So this amplitude is way too high. Let's drag that down to -40. Much better result. And you notice that it's basically rotating right when it hits the bottom, which is very nice. So I'm only going to do that to this one letter, just because if you do it to too many, then run the risk of it looking a little bit the same for everything. One thing I missed, you want to trim this up. We're good to go. Anchor point and the rotation again. Copy the previous one, add a marker. Let's go a little bit closer in. You can do this about in the first, I'd say, 12 frames to make it all look like it's all coming down kind of at the same time. Anything more than that, it looks a little bit goofy. So I recommend picking your points in the first few frames. Copy the rotation, paste the rotation. Oh, we got to go to anchor point, boom. That is done. Now we need to change the rotation. We got to change this out again. So this is the plus, so let's add the plus. Let's duplicate the U and change that to a plus. And that will be our plus. We just need to change the slider a little bit, and I'll do that in a jiff. Delete the old layer that was in here and drag up to the plus. Okay, just even that out, and we need to change this up. Let's go about here. We're going to need to change these values again. Let's drop it up to 3.7. Amplitude, let's go 5.13. Decay at 8. Frequency 3. Amplitude, let's go with a whopping 70. And decay a little higher at 1.6er. So there's the plus dropping in now. It's almost right in sync with where the S is. So an easy way to do that is just change where it's starting. And you got to change where the plus is starting up here on your slider control. And there you go. Now it looks like they're bouncing just off, which is, it's okay, but you might want to change it a little. Take the decay up or down just a little bit. Make sure it's not actually bouncing. There we go. So that's it for the tut side. So right now it's a good time to save. If you haven't done it so far, I'll name mine rope v1. Want to make sure that I remember, turn on your motion blur on all your layers. And we will go now to the rope part of this. Let's go back to the project file, pull in your rope. There you go, you got a rope. Let's make that half the size, turn on motion blur, rotate this 90 degrees, and let's move this up right above the T, right where the anchor point's going to be. So first thing, you want to get this pretty dang close to the top of this T to make it look realistic, or else it's just going to look weird with the string hanging down from the middle of it. It's going to look awkward. The effect we want to use for this is the Bezier warp. So drag that onto your layer and we're good to go. First off, we are going to be adding the expression onto 4 different layers. Let's bump up the quality just to start with, and let's go, I believe it is the bottom left and bottom right that need to be enabled for the expression, and also the top left and top right tangents. So for the expression, we are basically going to use this code. Basically, value, I think I talked about that before, it's just the value of the current object plus, and then now these brackets, which means x stays 0, comma, now we're into the y, and it's going to be an effect controller parameter slider, which of course means that we're going to need a slider on this layer, which will be controlling all 4 of these expressions. It's giving me a warning because I don't have the slider control actually in here yet. So let's pull up the slider, drop it in, bam, there we go. Got our slider control. We should have no problems at all now. Yep, paste in these remaining and let's test it out. Oh, 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 it's wobbling. It's definitely wobbling. Alright, so we're going to want to create a expression for this slider, and basically I'm going to paste in what I have created, and just like the other ones, we got the freq, which is the frequency, amplitude, decay, and time marker, which we do not have in yet. We want to put the time marker right where the t's original one is. So this is the original one. So that is where my rope time marker is going to be. Make it start there. And got to enable the expression now. And it is wobbling. Looks good, except we need to parent it to the T. Make sure when you parent it, it's at the end of the animation so it follows it. When we go back in time, looking pretty good. Alright, so there's not a whole lot of wobbling going on this one. We'll have to crank it up on the other ones, but it's not really going at the same time it should be. The reason for that is the frequency, amplitude, and decay should be pretty close to what this is on the T for the rotation. So you want to match this up. Frequency 1.5. Amplitude doesn't matter as much because that's going to be how much it's wiggling back and forth. And the decay, I want to change to 1.99. So let's give it a try now. Much more fluid. Okay, so the little marker here probably needs to be moved away from the beginning of it. Like right when it hits the farthest extent that this T is going to go, it's going to be straight. That's what it's doing right now, which is exactly what we want. The rope's looking pretty good for the T, so we should move on to the next letter. First off, I'm going to label this rope -T so we know what we're dealing with, because we're going to have a few of these on here. Next up, we got the U in tuts, and we got exactly the same thing that we need to do. We're going to need to change the parent to the U. We're going to need to drag this over to the U to where the anchor point is on the U, which is right here. Make sure that it's just touching the top of the U, and let's give it a try. That is looking pretty nice, although this U comes swinging way, way too far. So this needs to be changed on the marker, so it's not just dropping in out of nowhere. Much better. Just move one more back. That's looking better. Okay. And we're going to just keep doing that. This is going to be now the T2. Going to want to go to the end. Change it to the T. Change your new T2 to line up at the top of the T, just like before. So it should be moving in line now. Perfect. Now, of course, we now just need to start changing the expression slider, or else things are going to look a little hairy with these all moving together on the rope. So go down to your T and make sure it's the right T. Go to your rotation and get your information up here. Let's drop the frequency down to 1.5. 0.5, which is just a little bit different than the 1.1. The amplitude I will drop a lot. Let's go to 400, and we need to take that minus out. And decay, let's drop to 0.99. See how that baby looks. Well, first off, you got too much going on, so let's just turn on the T and the rope for the T. That obviously it looks not at all like it should be looking. So let's go back to the beginning of this. So we're going to want to change the anchor point in here to be pretty close to what is going on with the slider for this T2 object. So let's change this to 0.5 minus 200. Decay, let's go with 1.8. And that should be pretty close to what we're looking for. I'm not always positive about these numbers. I'm not even close to what I want, actually. But you just gotta keep tweaking it a little bit until you like the results. So it's a lot of guessing in this part of it. Let's check it out with everything there. It's looking decent. Next up, the S. Woo! I'm going to copy it from the actual T, the original T, just to get things all squared away with the numbers to be the exact same what I started with. Drop this to an S and go to the end of your animation. Make sure your parent is the S. Change the position of this to where your S anchor point is below. So that's pretty close. Move it over just a tad and we should be in business. Change the numbers on the slider just a tad. Let's go with 500. Frequency, let's bump it up to 1.8, and decay, let's drop it down to 139. See how this baby looks. I'm liking it. Next up, the plus. I'll just copy the S, change the name to plus, go to the end of the animation, select plus, move the layer over. So now that you got your plus hooked up to the parent, let's see what's going on with the anchor point. Let's see here, 137 for the frequency, and I'll change that on here. 137. And decays at 198. So I'll just change it to 190. Amplitude, let's crack that up to 700. See how this plus works. It's looking good. We might need to change the marker point. Let's see here. Yeah, definitely change the marker point to about here. So that's the plus. Alright, so we got that side taken care of. Now what I'm going to do, save it again, close everything up, and I'm going to duplicate that layer. That is going to be the AETuts side. Now this is going to be the AE side. So we have AETuts side and AE side. This is so just to make things quicker, this is what I did. I combined it in two different ones. Go back to the tuts. You can turn off the A and the E. And now we're going to make a master composition to hold everything in. Okay. Let's drop both of these in and just offset the tuts just a tad. Say 13 frames. You want to now go into your AE section and animate these two letters to match these. Now this part's pretty easy because you can just copy what you used on the last 4 letters. So go into your effects, change the A and the E of the rotation and anchor point. Hold down Alt or Option, make your expressions. Get those toggled open, and now you can just pick a random one of these. Let's go with the anchor on the S. Copy that over, and we'll put that on the A. And I don't have a marker point in, of course. Should be good to go now. Make only the A and the E visible so I don't get confused. And what I'm going to do is just change the amplitude just 10 points, just to make it just a little bit different. And now go back, copy the rotation, paste in the rotation. Now in the rotation, this one refers to the anchor point. Oh, this one doesn't refer to anything. So in this one, it should be working out pretty well. I'm going to decrease the decay a little to make it a lingering rotation, which I like, and just crop it. Crop that beginning. Now just do the same thing for the E. Just take one that you already made, copy it, paste it, put your marker in, copy it, paste it, and we got the E animating now. That one's got a heavy rotation on it. It's probably going to be pretty noticeable. So drop down this to 86 and make it a negative. Let's try that one out. That's looking pretty good. Now enable that one, and it's pretty decent. Crop out that, and now all you have to do is add the ropes. So I'm just going to use the ropes that we already used. Make it as easy as pie. So I'm going to grab the plus rope, drag that over to the A, make sure it's above where the anchor point is. And now I'm going to change the parent to the A instead of the plus. Looking not too shabby. Now just need to change one of these to the E. Let's go with this one. Change it over the E. Make sure this is centered above the anchor point. And give it a whirl. It looks okay. I think I'll increase the amplitude just a tad. 435. Liking that. Alright, now basically we can delete everything else on here that we already used. So these ropes and all the other layers. Now we just got the A, the E, and 2 ropes and our expression layer. Go back to your master, see how it's looking. Play it through. It's looking decent. I believe the tuts isn't coming in far enough, so I'm going to drop that in 20 seconds later, or 20 frames later. So it looks like they're dropping separately. One thing I forgot to do is we're going to have to put a transparency on these So once they get to a holding spot, we'll have these ropes disappear. So select all your rope layers, go ahead 10 frames, drop the opacity down to 0, and now I just want to offset these just a little bit. Alright, they have been offset. Presto. Go to the AE layer and do the same thing. Transparency, dropping it to 0, and just offset just a tad. And back to the master. AETuts. All we need now is make a little background for it. Let's go with a dark orange color. Drop to that the background. Another solid. And make it a dark blue. And we're going to use this dark brown as a mask just for the edge. So just make a random mask around just the edges of the area, so we just have the corners peeking out. You want to increase the mask feather quite a bit and then put it on subtract instead of add. Now, last but not least, you can drop the darken maybe on this. Yeah, I'm liking darken. Makes it a little lively. So AETuts is now dropping in and then evaporating. That's your basic animation on how to make the bouncing rope effect, as I call it, for animating logos or text or basically whatever you want. This is Matthew Butler, this first tutorial from AETuts, and I hope you enjoyed it.